Welcome. As you can see, it's just me for now until Neil gets around to it. Shouldn't be any surprise. I will start off answering all of your questions. Anything you have, please bring them in. Sorry for the delay. Neil clearly got caught up with something, and so until he gets here, you're stuck with me. With that in mind, you can clearly see the hat. The new album dropped. I'm super pumped about it. Well, EP, I guess, is not for a full album. It's only 6 songs, I think. But big fan. Really enjoyed it. It has some real bangers on it that really resonate well with me. But that's not what you're here for. You're here because it's week 12 of the fantasy football season. We are almost to playoffs. You have roughly 2 weeks, if not 3, depending on your format and everything else. But until that happens, we're here. You've made it this far. More than likely, you know what you need to do in order to win. There are a couple, you should be surprised, are a couple teams on bye. You're not going to have your Chargers. I know. It's a 1 week that I'm really happy we finally have a bye because we needed it so bad. It's been a rough time. I don't love it. It's been frustrating. This past week was embarrassing. I did not like that at all. You also won't have any Broncos, so maybe they can figure out what they're doing with their offense because that last game they got lucky with just overall their execution on offense. Their defense is extremely good, as you continue to see week in and week out. And then not finally. We then have the Dolphins, which you were probably playing Achane and Waddle as those two maybe potentially streaming Tua, but And then finally the Commanders, which good luck. If you had a commander and that was in your starting lineup, that's terrifying. You do have a handful of other options this week, so shouldn't be that big a deal. Really excited for it. So if you guys have your questions, please ask, and I will get them answered. Outside of that, for tomorrow, no Dalton Kincaid. Already listed him as out. Curtis Samuel and Mecole Hardman, less important. CJ Stroud is out, which means you can still fire up Jaden Higgins and Nico Collins. Chiefs, everybody seems to be playing the Chiefs-Colts game. I'm trying to see if there's any other. I'm kind of watching, of course, like everybody, watching Jalen Warren because if he is out, Kenneth Gainwell, they said that he could have came back in, but we know the starting running back in Pittsburgh, if they have the full job, is just going to dominate. So it makes it very interesting and easy. On that same note, looking at specifically running back, the other one everybody is watching is oh my gosh, I can't think of his stinking name. Josh Jacobs, because of course, if he is out, Emmanuel Wilson becomes an immediate starter on your team. So very curious to see how that ends up working out. Hey Daniel, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. I'm pretty sure you're on the East Coast, so it's 9. It's pretty late out there. But Brissett or Flacco, this week I have Brissett ranked higher. Shouldn't be that big of a surprise. Brought him up on Monday's show. I've been pleasantly surprised at how quietly he's just been being a very consistent streamer for you over the past 4 weeks. He hasn't had a game under 19 fantasy points. Pretty much since he took over that job. He's been playing extremely well. He's the QB 8, and over the past 5 weeks, I guess, because he did have a bye in there. His past 4 games, he hasn't had a game under 19 fantasy points. So if he is out there, definitely somebody I am willing to stream. So makes it easy. But while everybody is still getting around, other bits of news. Tamara, how's it going? Montgomery or Marks? I have Marks higher. I am a little nervous about this game. Shouldn't be that surprising. Mostly because what the heck? Why is it not popping up? Bills have been pretty good, but they also are a run funnel defense. And with Davis Mills, I'm a lot more confident in that offense as a whole. I have Montgomery lower just because why is it? No, that's why. The Giants have actually been pretty good against the run, and of course, even more surprising, Jamar Gibbs has just been outstanding. He's really taken over a majority of the work. Granted, I'm going to assume that's mostly game script, but they did it last year. Gibbs kind of started taking more and more on. Of course, Montgomery ended up getting hurt, which also kind of really allowed for fantasy managers to have a very consistent player for you. So interesting to see how that's going. The other big news that everybody's going to be talking about, Joe Burrow logged a full practice. Bengals kind of seem like they're in the mood to mess around and find out, because full practice for Joe. I know that Joe Flacco has been beat up, but Burrow coming back so early. I mean, they had talked about next week potentially, which I feel even that felt a little suspicious. Not something that I want to do. So definitely makes me more nervous. And then on that same Bengals note, Mike Gesicki returning to practice, gets the full practice in. It's another interesting tidbit, because people were looking at Noah Fant. Well, if Gesicki's starting back and has a full practice, that really muddies it up. I was even talking about on Monday, Andre Yoshivas and how he could potentially play a role. Well, now it's going to be between 3 different players. I really don't like that in the chance for fantasy. It really is scary. And I guess the other thing that I'm going to bring up is the Jets are changing the quarterback, benching Justin Fields for Tyrod Taylor. This is an interesting move. I'm going to be very curious to see how much it changes. The good news about this is realistically, Breece Hall isn't super effective. I'm very much more curious, though, about Mason Taylor's usage moving forward and just the rest of the cast around Garrett Wilson once he returned. I don't think he's pretty sure they placed him on IR, so he's still out for a few weeks. So seeing what other options end up popping up will be very interesting in New York as potentially fantasy viable starters. It's going to be another thing to be on the lookout for. But yeah, so if you guys have questions, please ask. I'll continue to work through. Trey Benson brought it up. They are at the point that his window is now open. They can activate him and it be completely fine, but it's just not an ideal situation. You don't love it, because if he comes back now, he's likely going to be in a split. They already ruled DeMarcado out, which is at least a somewhat plus. And Marvin Harrison Jr.'s out, also somewhat of a plus because, as I brought up last week, Michael Wilson ends up becoming just exploding and having an awesome week last week. And if you still have him, don't see any reason to stop at this point. He's been going off. It's been a pretty consistent work. And so that's the other good question, Daniel. How do I feel about Henderson? We've kind of discussed it in the Discord a little bit, but I do agree it's probably going to be a 60-40 split of some sort. Is that going to be hot hand? Is it going to be game script dependent? Very interesting to see how that works out. I'm more nervous on it because while we've seen what Henderson can do, it's going to be really dependent on the pass rush. Is what it really comes down to, because at that point, Stevenson is still the better pass pro and continues to get that work and makes me more nervous. Clearly, having the full job is massive, and so it's more worth it. The opportunity, I still think, would lean Henderson because the big play, but we've seen how that's worked out for the other teams. You always end up being frustrated for the guy that comes in and steals the touchdown, whether that's Kareem Hunt or Devin Singletary. When you get to that zone, more often than not, you're going to see an older back come in, a more experienced player, because they're able to get in the end zone and then unlikely going to fumble. That's not the issue for, granted, Stevenson has his fumbling issues. So I'm going to definitely keep that on notice because it's very much true. But the fact that he is a mature player, he knows what he's looking for, he's able to score. I'm very curious to see how that ends up showing up in the stat book and box score this upcoming week. Very curious to see what the snap breakdown is, and if it ends up working out, because it's about that time. Right about now is when the rookie players, as we've kind of seen happen, start to take over. So, Tiny's. All right, modify. Would you trade Saquon, A.J. Brown, and Jordan Addison for Ladd and James Cook? Kind of depends on the rest of your team. I'm probably okay with that because you're getting a much younger talent. This will definitely be something that I bring up when Neil gets on, if he gets on. And so, that in mind, I'm very curious to see how this ends up working out. I do prefer the younger back as well, and James Cook, who's clearly continued to be the player that everybody kind of expected, but wasn't sure would be sustainable. So definitely makes it more iffy. Daniel, projections look nice. Yeah. And they are. That's how it is when you have that full job. If you have that full job, the points look great. The projection looks great. It's just what that actually means, how that actually works out. Who knows? All right. So while we wait for more questions to roll in, let me see here. Shadur Sanders is going to get the start. That's going to be something interesting to keep an eye on. Having a full week of practicing with the ones will be interesting. I don't think that was the case. And it's also somewhat good news because he gets to play the Raiders, who are able to get pressure on you with Crosby and have shown up in decent defense. They've in this kind of matchup, I'm kind of expecting Shadur to be pushed out of the pocket, which he's not willing to step up really in the pocket normally anyway. So I don't love that. Looking at his college tape, maybe he's grown since then, but it'll be very interesting to see how he gets his debut and how that ends up working out for him. I'm also very curious how the targets get distributed again in this area. It seemed to go to the players that it used to go to. So I'm Cedric Tillman, and well, it'll be very curious since David Njoku is also day to day. So Fan is probably going to be another option. Are they going to stick with Judkins, or are they going to use more of Samson? I think that's going to be very game script dependent. So Tamra, PPR, I have Goff. So I have to drop Mariota if Rodgers doesn't play and Kipka got shut. Oy. Yeah, I'm fine dropping Rodgers if I have to. And of them for this week, that's a good question. Let me pull up rankings for that. I have go to quarterbacks. Cousins. Does look like it's going to be Cousins. I have Cousins at my QB 24. Taylor at 22. So maybe. And yeah, I think it's going to be Tyler. So I'm going to roll him out again if that's the case. Going to go Tyler Shook. Whatever, however you say his last name. So yeah, I don't like doing. Well, you can't play. Oh, you could keep Mariota. I was saying you could drop Rodgers, but I'm also fine dropping Mariota if you need to as well. Because again, things that they're being very coy about, a wrist injury. That's never something that you like for a quarterback. So we'll see how that ends up. I'm not super worried about it, but again, it's something you want to keep an eye on. All right, what else? Man. Of course, more practice hype around Bucky Irving, Chris Godwin, getting more work in practice. Don't know what that actually means. They're actually going to start. The big other surprising kind of news is Tyler Higbee going to IR. Not something that I expected, not somebody who is fantasy viable, but the fact that he just popped up out of nowhere and decided they were going to do that was brutal. So this is very dependent on Rodgers' wrist, Tamara. I am fine dropping Rodgers depending on what the wrist, how the wrist works out. I wouldn't be surprised if they sit him for that reason, so that he can heal up for the next couple of weeks. And then Mariota, you're at that same point that Jaden Daniels is probably coming back. I'm fine dropping either of these. They're both just so options, and not too surprised. I don't know why you played him. That doesn't sound like anybody I would ever play. What didn't I have him as a set of the week last week? That doesn't mean a whole lot, granted, but woof. Was not a fan. And that he was out without Kincaid. Brutal. I can double check. Now I have to pull up the records to see, because now I'm not sure of myself. I'm pretty sure I had him as a sit last week, but get to the bottom of the page. He was he mine or was he? Yep, he was my set of the week. So, sorry. Don't know what to tell you on that one, Daniel. That one's on you. Unless you just had a lot worse options. Because I was... Oh, you had to in one week. That's fair. I completely understand if you have to. It's when you don't and you make that decision willingly. That is on you, my friend. BH417. Shavers or Bigsby stash in 12-team PPR. I'm curious about Shavers. It'll be interesting to see how that ends up breaking down. Again, it was really based on the injury, and so if that remains the same, I'm fine rolling him out. They're not going to have Samuel or Kincaid or Hardman, so they're going to have to go to somebody. That is the right team, right? I have to double check. Yeah. All right. Again, it's also very random. And Bigsby is really only a stash if you have Barkley. If you have Barkley, that's the one thing I'm willing, because he is a handcuff, and we've seen how handcuffs work out. What's up, Polo? I know it's just me. I have yelled at Neil, and he's just not getting it. Here, I'll send him another message. I mean, he might be buried under snow. Who knows? But if you guys have questions, please ask. I'm going to continue to walk through other things while we theoretically wait for Neil doing his nonsense. Calvin Ridley is done, so that's not an ideal situation either. Also, that entire team got beat up in that past game with DK suffering an injury, Iomanner suffering an injury or concussions. In any case, it's crazy that that's even an issue, with how it just seems like everybody on that team is getting hurt. All right, well, I'm going to try and work a trade with Bijan for either Gibbs or James Cook. Would you do either, or should I stand pat? I mean, I'm not worried about Bijan. I am worried about other options. Of those, I just... It seems like just such a lateral move. Again, we've brought it up a couple times that we have some other options that I'm much more interested in, specifically because of the fact that those matchups include, for example, Jacobs. Josh Jacobs is one of our favorite gets right now because his fantasy rest of season schedule is so good that you potentially flipping that for him, and I mean at this point Wilson as well, because again you need to have your handcuffs, because especially if there's one prominent one, for this exact reason, you're put into a corner that you're looking at these teams that split backfields, and it becomes very messy. And so it's definitely interesting to kind of see how that's been working out. If you are wanting to trade for one of those two options in Cook or Gibbs, I think Cook has the better. No, it's Gibbs. Gibbs gets to play Packers, Cowboys. Unfortunately, the first week of playoffs is the Rams, but then he gets Steelers and Vikings and ends with Chicago. So pretty solid there. Meanwhile, the Bills are gonna have a lot better option for pass catchers. So Diggs is another player that I'm definitely looking for. And so because this week he's definitely going to struggle. Houston has been one of the most dominant, but they also play the Patriots and the Browns, who have just been incredible at stopping the run. So, that's again part of the reason I'm okay. Why I said dropping Rodgers, because I don't know why you would start him back up. Is really what it comes down to. And let me double check. I'm pretty sure. I guess Rodgers past 3 games, he hasn't broken over 15 fantasy points. Meanwhile, Mariota does have a goose egg in the middle of that, but he only has, in the past, 3 games. I guess I should just go to full season for that because I don't remember when Mariota played and when he didn't. So he played weeks. He's only had 3 games under 15 fantasy points. One was the game that Daniels got hurt in the middle of it. Then his second start, then he put up a 0 in that horrible game that he couldn't do anything and really hurt me. Then put up an 18 and a 16. So it will be very interesting to try and see. Meanwhile, Rodgers, again, is played well. I mean, he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. So half of his games are under 13 fantasy points. He's had 1, 2, 3. I should have done that way. 3 games over 16 fantasy points. 4 games. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 4 games over 16 fantasy points. And if he's now hurt, makes me even more hesitant to do it. And he's been getting it done in weird ways. Like he's been using the tight ends, which I don't like. All right, Tamara, this is interesting. It's going to be Nunn guy again. I'm struggling to trust a Titan. This is an ideal matchup and has been very brutal. So much rather stay away from that the best I can. Polo, again, brought it up last week, and he did a lot better than I was expecting to. That is for sure. Absolutely just exploded, had a massive day, and it just continued to roll. Now it comes down to the fact that if Bucky plays, Sean Tucker becomes the one who likely rides the pine because White's in that other role. Now, if they were to keep Sean Tucker and put White on the bench as the potential backup, which I don't believe that would ever happen, but I'll be very curious to see if it does end up that way. Until it does, until we get definitive news on Bucky, I'm not willing to start Tucker. If Bucky goes. So if Bucky is completely out, fire him up. Completely fine. I still don't love the matchup this week, but it'll be all right. BH417, X-Worthy, Xavier Worthy, borderline droppable. Who should I trade him for? Trade deadline. This is, again, I agree. He's on the struggle bus for sure, but it is really dependent on what other things where you're weak, what you're looking for, what you can trade him for, who needs a wide receiver, who's shallow at wide receiver. more often than not, this is going to be a staple item. So you're going to have to staple it to something else to try and get better at that position. And I'm definitely assuming that this is redraft and not dynasty, because if it's dynasty, I'm probably going to keep Xavier Worthy, unless I can just get something that I see potentially has more upside, like Jaden Higgins, which I don't think you might be able to do that depending on the person, but it's still very unlikely. All right, Tamer, let's see. Bills, 49ers, or Falcons? Think it's the Falcons, but let me double check. Or maybe I'm thinking last week. Okay, Falcons at 6, Bills at 10, 49ers at 17. So it's Falcons. I am also nervous about that, though. I'm not. That's not one I'd be super confident in. All right, Daniel. You'd flex Hendo over Shakir, Tracy, and Pierce. No. I'm not flexing Henderson over Pierce. No. I like Alec Pierce, man. I definitely would over Shakir, but this game I'm a little more iffy on it just because I don't think Stingley's. Actually, I didn't see if Stingley was playing, but if he is, I think Shakir would end up getting a lot of Stingley. And then Tracy becomes interesting because I think Dart looks like he's going to play. They're progressing him through the concussion protocol. And so, with that in mind, let's see. I think I would still. It's going to be toss up between him and Tracy. I think Henderson has more upside, mostly because they're playing the Lions. So I'm fine with Henderson over Shakir, potentially Shakir or Tracy, but I'm not playing him over Alec. Not going to do it. He's my guy, man. I can't quit you. Mostly I can't quit the fact that he's running a lot more routes now and has kind of taken over the wide receiver 2 role, which I really like. And it's not just deep shots. Granted, there are deep shots, but he's also being used in intermediate situations and trying to create from there. So, real excited for that. All right. Jaguars are pretty much all beat up. Etienne, Tootin, Brian Thomas, Brent Strange all had limited practices today. I'm very curious to see how that ends up working out. I'm going to guess that Etienne plays. I'm curious about the Tootin Etienne split if Tootin is good to go. BTJ, I'm not willing to test that out. And I really thought that they had said they were going to start Brent Strange, but that didn't happen either. So yet again, we're in a situation that we don't like at all. There's been way too many question marks all over the place when it comes to that team. And, I mean, again, you're looking... It reminds me too much of the Godwin situation. Like, that whole thing just terrifies me for Chris Godwin and Bucky Irving and how they... Oh, we're going to ramp them up, and then they don't... It's so weird. Outside of that, this Jets game I'm just so curious about. I don't think it's going to be good. Don't get me wrong. I think there are potentially fantasy viable options. I just don't know what they're going to be. Because, again, looking at teams that I really like for playoff purposes, Jets' run game is going to be pretty good until your week 17 where they face the Patriots. Jacksonville's also been doing a pretty good job against the run, but they get Falcons, Miami, Jags, Saints, Patriots, Buffalo. So, interested in that. And then, again, you bring up middle of the pack when it comes to wide receiver. Don't love that if you're looking at potential trade options. Tootin, obviously, if he plays, or Shavers worthy. Yeah, it'd be that's the order I'd have it. Tootin, Shavers worthy. Because again, and they just aren't using Worthy the right way, and they aren't giving him shots near the line of scrimmage or letting him create space and do it on his own. They've done a handful of jet sweeps, but it's again not something that I'm willing to trust. All right, Daniel. If Stevenson is active, have to move him off IR. Would you drop Stevenson, Downs, Monungai, QJ? Of them, that's tough. I'm kind of getting more interested in dropping. Still not QJ. I think it's Downs, but let me double check because I haven't. I'm going to compare their actual numbers over the past handful of weeks because, again, thought process of how players have done in recent memory. I haven't remembered and haven't been necessarily paying attention a lot to Downs because I don't feel like he's been nearly involved. He's become the wide receiver 3 on that team. Well, technically 4 if you include Tyler Warren. Sorry. Had to clear my mind. 3, 4, 5. He's had 5 weeks of double digits. The last week, again, recency bias. His last week before the bye, he had 1.3 fantasy points. Not an ideal situation. The opportunity should be there this week. But until that actually happens, I'm more hesitant, especially with how Pierce has been playing. Pierce gets injured, very much back on the down train. Otherwise, the thing about QJ remains the fact that they have now started to try and move him closer to the line of scrimmage in his usage. And he's, again, recency bias. Granted, this past week, not good. Previous 2 weeks, though, he was flirting with 10 fantasy points. So he's had, what? 1, 2. One game he was out. He had 1, 2, 3, 4 games that he hasn't hit double digits, which is pretty crazy, even with all of that. So very curious to see how that ends up working out in comparison. And then Monungai, again, because you have Swift, I can't get rid of him. I'm not willing to drop him. So more interested in dropping Tracy potentially, but I'm still trying to give him hope with Dart and seeing if that doesn't adjust anything. All right, Tamara. Purdy, Mayfield, or Darnold. Of these options, I think I still have Purdy the highest. His return last week was everything you wanted to be. Yes, I have Purdy over Mayfield and over Darnold. Actually, I have it Purdy, Darnold, Mayfield, and they're separated by a little bit. No problem. Happy to help. Yep, that's what I'm asking. I've sent him multiple pings. He just hasn't shown up. I don't know what's going on with him. I'm really hoping he's okay, but I haven't heard anything. So, a little more iffy on it. All right. Anthony, happy to help. Thoughts on picking Yoshi Voss for a flex, being the chase out? Yeah, again, I brought this up earlier. My worry is now that Gesicki is going. Sorry, got distracted. With Gesicki back and Fant, I'm more nervous about him having those short area targets, and so I'm very iffy on it now. Definitely makes me more uh, more hesitant on it. There are much better other options right now that I'm looking at that are potentially available. Let's see. I was gonna, because again, I was thinking that same way, but then they added Gesicki back, and that made me more nervous. So let me see. Where do I have Yoshivas? Okay. I currently have potential streamer. Well, I don't know how available he is. I'd play Tillman, Dortch, Lockett, Jaden Higgins. I have Pierce all up there too, but I doubt he's available anymore. Alec Pierce is way up there if he's still available, which I think he was. He was pretty widely available again on Monday. I didn't look again for this week to see where it's been at, and so very curious on that. But those are some more different options that I'd much rather go with right now because the uncertainty. I really was hoping for Yoshivas to be a thing, but if they have all of the options available at tight end, it makes me much more hesitant to roll them out there. Daniel Everhart, Baker or Flacco. I'm pretty sure it is Baker. I don't. Oh yeah, because Flacco's playing the Patriots. Yeah, it's Baker. I have Flacco 6 spots behind him. Low end QB2. All right, M. Gonzalez. Let's see. 14 team PPR. Start 1 QB. TD's count set. 2 teams available. Should I drop any to get him? Caleb or Monangai? I mean, because it's only a 1 QB league, I'm fine dropping Caleb for it. Unless you could trade at this point, I would be more interested in trading potentially Caleb and Monangai to whoever is managing the Swift manager and seeing if I can't upgrade for another potential running back or a wide receiver that could help. All right. Crisscross, would you trade Herbert and Nico for Lamar and MHA, 7-12 team, 2 running back, 3 wide receiver? Is this a super flex? Because you have Lamar and Dart. I'm assuming it's a super flex based on that. The hesitancy here comes from the fact that Herbert is going to have to throw. So his numbers are going to be up, and he's already been rushing. Let me pull up the rest of season because I'm pretty sure that's an area that gives a boost to Lamar just a little bit. Yeah. So the Ravens have the best rest of season schedule for quarterback. The issue with that is Lamar hasn't really been throwing at a high enough rate. Granted, he's Lamar Jackson. So on the year, what is he? He is the quarterback. Jeez, he's further down than I expected him to be. Oh, because he missed 3 games. I forgot about that. He's currently quarterback 21. However, if you go by points per game, he's a quarterback 4, only being beaten out by Allen, Mahomes, and May. Stafford's actually right next to him, and as well as Hurts. So Herbert's a little lower, and this past week is what really kind of dug him down. That 4.3 is not an ideal situation, and looking at their rest of season schedule for the Chargers, they have the second hardest rest of season schedule because they get Raiders, which I'm not too worried about. However, they get Eagles, Chiefs. 1+ is they get the Cowboys, and then Texans and Denver. So it's a very difficult rest of the season schedule, so I'm fine doing that portion of it. I do not like getting Marvin Harrison because I would not be surprised if they just sit him down and not play him again for this year. So while you are upgrading at quarterback, because you technically are going to be starting a bunch of people ahead of him, I'm fine doing that. But you're really just trading for Lamar at that point. And I think Nico currently has a higher value than MHJ, and Herbert and Lamar are similar enough players that I feel like you could get a better wide receiver coming back to you. Long, short answer, somewhat, hopefully. Moving the wrong way because you already have Franklin. I don't want two Broncos. Things I would be interested in. I'm going to play Neil's game by myself at wide receiver. I would be looking at, Jameson Williams. I know that's also very risky and probably difficult now that he's had a couple of good games, but since, why can't I think of the Lions head coach? Campbell has taken over play calling duties, and Goff has been under center. He's seeing a higher target rate, so that'd be one thing I'd like. I would say JJ, but that's with other J Jettas and JJ McCarthy. That's been more iffy. The lowest, the one thing I really want is Diggs, because that's something I'm very interested in. But I don't know if this guy would give that up either, because Diggs is we've seen him be super efficient with the limited amount of targets he's had. Do I trust Mooney this week? That's a good one. No. And it's not necessarily, well, it's somewhat Mooney, but it's also Cousins. So this is a game that I am very much guessing, or making the educated guess that, that they're going to run a lot and use Bijan and Algier. So I have the running game being boosted up, and it makes me very nervous on the whole situation. So I don't love the matchup, and the other thing is Kyle Pitts has kind of been the one who's been the fallback for Cousins, and so he's had much bigger games. I have, for the first time in a while, Kyle Pitts is a tight end one, not overall, but as a top 12 tight end this week. Which, granted, that's not saying a whole lot, but still, I do expect him to potentially score. And then Booty coming off IR, drop one. Booty, B-Rob, or Mooney. At that point, I'm dropping Mooney. I'm not dropping Booty. I just talked about how much I like Diggs. I want Booty as well. And then you have CMC, so you have to keep B-Rob. It just is how it is. Man, I'm not used to having to do this for so long without somebody else to feed off. All right. Well, until more questions come in, I'm going to continue to kind of go over the, not necessary schedule, the games this week, the injuries, all that good stuff. With that in mind, it shouldn't be super surprising, but I love the higher scoring games. Fairbairn coming back has immediately come back into my, I think he's at my fourth best kicker this week. Because, again, while the Texans have been able to move the ball, they've been struggling to finish plays. Granted, it's been a lot better with Davis Mills, but still iffy on it. And currently, the leader in the clubhouse for highest scoring game is not surprisingly, Giants and Lions, followed closely by the Buccaneers and Rams, and Panthers and 49ers are also up there. So, with that in mind, things I'm very curious in it, and I really like what I continue to see from Bryce Young. I know, not a whole lot behind that, but with Tet playing so well, the opportunity is still going to be there. 49ers are still kind of beat up in the secondary. This could very much easily hit that over. They are still giving the 49ers a 7 points. So they're, what's that? Would be final score would be 28 to 21 to hit the over. I wouldn't be surprised if it's probably closer to the 30 to 24. So like that as a potential option. If you're looking for somebody to potentially stream this week, I do have Bryce Young just outside the top 12. Oh, all right, Anthony. Thoughts on Justin? Yeah. And again, I struggle with JJ McCarthy. I continue to bring it up because he is one of the players that definitely scares me the most, and it's not particularly close. It's very brutal, and I don't appreciate just his general usage of other options. I mean, he hasn't shown what he said 3 games over. Well, he's had 1 game over 20 points, and then 3 games over 15 points. And I literally saw a graphic today that showed him comparing him to Zach White, at which they had a similar starting with JJ throwing more touchdowns and more interceptions, but for fewer yards. It's that kind of stuff is terrifying. That's not something you are looking for when it comes to a starting quarterback. And looking at it just from a points per game perspective, his average right now, which again, he's only played 2, 4, 5 games this year, is 14.5. Where he's had a game of 4.8, 8, and then 16.7, 19.9, and 23.2. 23.2, of course, being that first game that nobody really had any tape on him. So, and the thing that really, I mean, not necessarily hinders him, but now that they have Jones back, they've also, I mean, they have a big win. They've had a couple of big wins. Like, granted, the Bengals were beat up, but they were able to beat the Browns. And then the real big win recently was the Lions. And so when you're able to do that, it kind of gives you a boost. So, and they have another tough matchup this week where they're going to the Packers, and they could win this. Again, depending on the game plan and everything else, the potential is definitely there. It makes me extremely nervous for any of the pass catching options. It immediately made me drop down Addison when he returned, and even just looking at golly, this past week, he has pull it up. I guess targeting is not the right word for it. The players that saw the most targets from him were, of course, Justin Jefferson, then Jordan Addison, which, great, back to normal. However, you kind of see that they both are right around 10 fantasy points, and like they're catching horrible passes. What really ends up saving Addison this week is a touchdown. Jefferson's going to be fine, but 5 for 9 for 61. That's very suspect. And I wouldn't consider the Bears a very good defense. I mean, that's not fair. They're a solid defense, but they're not a great they don't have great cornerbacks and people who are lockdown coverage players. So, all right. What about that Flacco question? With it possibly being Flacco's last game, which slot would he pick up for Superflex? The issue for this is, I really want to play Mills, but when I look at the other options, Ward's been beat up again. I don't trust Sanders to have that job for an extended period of time. I haven't seen Tyrod Taylor. I know what he is, and for fantasy, I don't love that as a player. Of them, I'm most likely going to lean Shah because it's something that I've seen, and while it isn't pretty, he's also not just destroying your week. Thankfully, not that again. Talking about things that don't mean a whole lot because he's only had 3 starts, and then a bye. But his last start, he put up 19 fantasy points. His first, he got thrown in. So all of his starts right now are double digits. He's averaging 8.6. So let me see. If I put it in for the last, well, I'll go from week 8 to week 10 because he was on bye. I don't want to have that against him. He moves to quarterback 21, which makes him flexible. With his big week being 19, which isn't saying a whole lot. However, in that time span, he's averaged 11.5 fantasy points, which, again, not great considering the first week he came in to fill in. Now, if you drop it down to week 9 and 10, he moves up to 19, which is a little better. He's averaging 14.6. That's much more reasonable. My issue is I wish I would have known that Brissett was likely going to take over that job and keep it because I don't think that they see any reason to use Kyler Murray moving forward. Brissett's just played extremely well at a high level and hasn't hurt anybody. So, wish I would have given that you as an option earlier, but not something I pay attention to because I really thought they were going to eventually come back to Kyler. Anthony, yes. Simple answer is yes. I do have Dart over Flacco and Jones. I'm actually really nervous on Daniel Jones. That coming down to the fact that it's the Chiefs who have been playing extremely well on defense. We just saw them hold Knicks to under 10 fantasy points. And granted, that was a divisional game. So I'm extremely nervous to play Daniel Jones this week. And in my rankings, I have him as I have Daniel Jones. Granted, it's not super low, but I have him at 14, which is just outside the top 12. Meanwhile, I do have Dart currently at 12 because he's questionable. This is very much, he could easily move up, assuming he clears concussion protocol, but this is also me kind of hedging for the fact that he might not clear concussion protocol. Fully expect him to. It also comes down that it's difficult to move anybody higher than that because the matchups aren't super, but the person I'm most nervous for as a starting quarterback this week is actually Josh Allen. Because the Texans have been very good against the quarterback position. So, and just a good defense overall. Makes me very iffy. All right. I still haven't heard back from Neil, so I'm going to switch from RTP to a different loadout. So give me a second. This is going to look weird. Okay. Sorry. Since it's just me, makes it a little easier on me. Bring back to this. All right, if you guys have questions, please go ahead and ask. But since, I still haven't heard anything, I'm going to send him one more message. Uh, and if I hear something great, if not, oh well. I will just run it through. Ooh, that's a good one. I do like that Fairbairn's back. This week in particular, let me pull up rankings for kickers. I was all surprised. I think a lot of people are hedging a little bit. Yeah. So I currently moved Fairbairn up to my fourth best kicker on the week, and I have Elliott at 11. Daniel, that is the question. I'm actually super nervous on it because of the fact that you're looking at a player who now has a quarterback coming in who will get his first start. And while he could catch dump offs, this matchup isn't the ideal situation for that. I'm more nervous that they end up playing a lot with Samson because they want more pass pro to try and stop Crosby and other players from getting after him. And so, with that in mind, it makes me very anxious to try and roll that out. I like the idea because, again, in theory, we're looking at a guy who, if he sees, I'm going to hope for 25 touches, I would expect him to hit over 100 all-purpose yards to score a touchdown against the Raiders. However, the Raiders could also be like, well, it's Shadir's first start. Let's see him throw. Let's see if he can't beat us. And they stack the box, and at that point, you're hoping for dump-offs to Judkins, and that the risk there is just so high. I'd rather not worry. Put that as a starting option. However, with that in mind, I currently have. I'm going to pull it up because I don't remember where I moved him to. I have moved him down. Granted, because again, talking about things that you're not certain of. I've moved it all the way down to 16 because I am a little nervous about it. He's which I guess is pretty much where everybody else is kind of sitting as well. Based on ECR, it looks like he is currently at 15. I'll double check it because I have it up. Yeah, he's currently at 15 with an average matchup. So definitely not something you're super buying into. But yeah. Because there are so few of you. Again, if you haven't listened to the new NF album and you like Christian rap or Christian music / clean music overall, really enjoy his new album, Fear. If you hopped on my TikTok and you saw the video, that was one of his new songs I'm really pumped about. So, thanks, Anthony. I mean, I can do this. I like having Neil. We feed off each other better. He's able to bicker at me. I'm able to bicker back, and it just makes the whole show a lot more enjoyable for everybody instead of having to listen to me talk for the entirety of the show, which nobody wants. I don't want it. That's the reason that I have a co-host / an actual host, because I don't know how well I do. Oh, Neil always gives me crap about it because I get it. I'm not the most polished person when it comes to talking. It's not my forte. Don't like doing it. Prefer not to do it. Much rather look at the numbers, do the deep dives, all that good stuff. Talking, yeah, I'm good. But since he's not here and not responding, I will do my QB start of the week, and because it fits so well with the topics we covered recently, shouldn't be any surprises. Jackson Dart versus the Lions. Lions have actually been a pretty good matchup for quarterbacks. Or secondaries been struggling, and this is a game that could very easily go back and forth. Dart's really shown up in a good fashion, assuming he is playing, because he is progressing. He's still in concussion protocol technically, so that is to change. It makes me more hesitant to play it. on that same note, I brought up the two sits that I'm very nervous on. I brought up Josh Allen because I am nervous about it, and Daniel Jones versus the Chiefs. Because as Neil likes to say, if Daniel Jones doesn't have somebody to establish the run with, so Jonathan Taylor is going to play against the Chiefs. However, the Chiefs have been extremely good against the run, specifically. It's going to make Jones's day very difficult. So those are the two players that I'm very much more hesitant to play. I don't think there's any way you could get out of starting Josh Allen. However, I do think you could potentially dance around playing Daniel Jones this week. All right, Anthony. Who has better season rest of the way? Trey Benson or RJ Harvey? The news for this that helps is Dobbins being placed on IR. So the Broncos don't have the best rest of season. Meanwhile, the Cardinals, let's see what theirs looks like. I mean, they're both kind of rough. The positives for the Cardinals, though, is that they get the Bucks and then Falcons and Bengals in playoffs as two of their playoffs teams. Granted, the first team that they face is the Texans, which have been really good against the run. So if I'm looking, it's going to be Benson. Yeah, and still roster the people. Neil's not here, and I can't get a hold of him, so I'm nervous. I'm really hoping he's okay. So I've reached out and tried to get everything through, but it is still roster the people. It's still the right show. You're still in the right spot, Glitchy. Just means that this is going to be a much shorter show because while I am an airbag, I do not want to talk to myself for an hour. Well, it's already been an hour. I somehow been able to talk to myself for an hour. But we're getting through the show just fine. I've covered a lot of the stuff that I felt like I needed to be covered, including injuries and which normally come up throughout the show anyway. All right. Another drink. Dead air time. Okay. Running back start of the week. This is, again, very difficult because I don't like how the running backs are when it comes to depth right now. It makes it very difficult. It drops off a cliff very quickly. The one I was hoping I'd be able to get would be Emmanuel Wilson on the chance that Josh Jacobs does sit. But at this point, it kind of is still up in the air. Josh Jacobs could potentially play. Makes me more nervous. So my start of the week is going to be Devin Singletary versus the Lions because the one thing that I do love is a vulture. And Singletary was used for all the goal line carries this past game. And if that's what that's specifically what I'm looking for when it comes to my running backs. It's part of the reason I love Kareem Hunt every week. He's the guy who comes in at the goal line, and they want that veteran presence. He still remains that guy. Tracy's just continues to get beat up in that area. So, and Singletary seems to find it. There should be no surprise after last week that I am again going to the well of things that scare me. And my running back sit of the week is going to be Ashton Genty versus the Browns. Browns have just been a phenomenal defense overall. They haven't really allowed any running backs to get going. And Myles Garrett continues to put so much pressure on every player. And while I like Genty, we just saw this past week his downside is massive. It absolutely terrifies me. All right, Tamara, golly. Totally random. How do you feel about quarterback scoring styles? So this is funny because the league that Neil and I play in for our nonsense league together is actually a league that it has very dynamic scoring for quarterback. So we actually get negative points for incompletions, negative points for interceptions. So this past week I literally lost because Darnold killed me. He gave me negative 12 fantasy points. Granted, that wouldn't have helped because I think Mariota didn't do a whole lot. Josh Jacobs got hurt. And so it ended up being a very brutal week for me overall. So I like it. But again, when you're doing stuff like that, it really depends on how you want to score things. So I like how we have it, because I do think it's a lot more difficult. It makes quarterbacks, the way we also have it is an auction league and contract league. So you have to pay quarterbacks. You do a bidding process. It's very much like you're an actual NFL GM, uh, in that factor, where you only have like we have, I think, 3 4-year contracts for players. We do a rookie draft, um, and then we also do free agency signings, and so it becomes very interesting. So it could be any number of things, and it's interesting. I completely understand that. However, the fact that the Seahawks were in that game, even with Darnold throwing 4 picks, is just incredible. Because again, that it more often than not, usually the max you can get for that is -2. But the other issue is you get negative points for incompletions. Well, is that always the quarterback's fault? No. Sometimes he's escaping the pocket. Sometimes he doesn't want to lose it down. There's other things that kind of come into play, but you still want players that are able to put up those kind of numbers. So I'm trying to think of who I guess I could actually pull up the league and see. I actually haven't looked since we started to see if I'm able to even look at the fantasy points and who the leaders are when it comes to that scoring. For fantasy quarterbacks, because I would guess that somebody like Jacoby Brissett is probably pretty high on that list, specifically for this year. Drake May is probably also pretty high because he doesn't really turn over the ball a whole lot. He has a high completion rate. Let's see. Can I find players? Okay. So if I go to all and go to fantasy points and look at quarterback. So right now, the highest scoring quarterbacks are Josh Allen with 262 with his 7 interceptions, are pretty high, but he hasn't really had a negative week. Drake May is right behind him. Matthew Stafford. Dak's been playing very well. He has completed 253, which I think is actually the most. Yeah, he has the most completions, with one of the lower incompletion or lower attempts at 362. So it's stuff like that it makes it very interesting to kind of compare players in a very different capacity of, while it is important, they are also moving the ball, they're not turning it over. Those are all things that could very easily stack up and cost you a week. All right, Anthony, building off Tamar's question, are you in favor of not having DST slot in your league? I mean, it's fine. The one thing I do want to try is IDP, because I would be interested in seeing how individual defensive players and how that scoring could be for fantasy, because again, you're looking at different skill sets, different scoring factors. Like you start paying attention to, again, more important stats like tackles, tackles for losses, half tackles, how the points work out. That's one thing that I really would like to do this next season, is get into an IDP league. I keep saying that, but nobody wants me to play in it, and so it definitely makes it very interesting. And it's not uncommon. People are getting rid of the defenses. They are getting rid of kickers, and opting for more flex players and quarterbacks. Yeah, the only issue with that of getting rid of those positions is that you then go and look at not week to week. So currently, your best kicker on the year has scored 112 fantasy points, which shouldn't be surprising. It's Dicker and Myers. So when you get to that point, that would make them the quarterback 28, just behind Jaden Daniels and Michael Penix. That would make them the running back 16. Well, that's standard. I should adjust that. Sorry. Giving out too much false information. It'd make them the running back 23 ahead of Kenneth Walker and just behind Quinshon Judkins. It would make them the wide receiver 32 and the tight end 8. Well, 6. 7. I guess technically 7. Just added Jawan Johnson. So when you compare kickers, that's the one thing that I know isn't super fair because they're no matter what, they're going to be on the field. Now, defense is a lot more easy to get rid of because, again, while people say kickers are fluky, defense is really the top scoring defense currently is Seattle, who are just ahead of Houston at 98 points, and Houston's at 97, which then makes them the quarterback 30, the wide receiver, got to make sure it's PPR because we don't want standard. Don't want to do that at all. The wide receiver, running back 28, sorry. The wide receiver 38 and the tight end 16. So, I mean, at that point, that's like the one downfall is that you are getting actual value from these players that you couldn't necessarily replace at other positions. So, while it does make the league is a lot more difficult, it's definitely something interesting. Yeah, and you, Tamara, with IDP, yeah, that is a big part of it, but you also have to take into account the different scoring formats because there are a variety. So, all right, different league, same guy. Who would you cut for Booty to move off IR? Dude, it's still probably Pacheco. It's very close between him and Wilson. I just think you can play Wilson this week still, so I'd rather wait. So I'd rather cut Pacheco. And then flex 2, Monangai, Worthy, Downs, Mooney. It's probably going to be Monangai and Mooney, just because I think the targets are going to be there. Downs is interesting, but again, with how Alec Pierce has been playing, it's very difficult for me to want to go to the third, fourth target on the team. All right. Continuing. Oh, just kidding. All right, no problem. I'm going to move into. Well, where'd it go? Oh, my wide receiver start of the week. Sorry. Now that we're back. And it shouldn't be any surprise. I'm back to Jaden Higgins. Continues to be the wide receiver 2 on the team with Davis Mills. He's really stepped up. He's wide receiver 31 over the past 4 weeks, including 2 double-digit games and only 1 actually bad game. He almost had 3 double-digit games, but he fell just short this past week at 9.6. Still a pretty good flex for you. And then my wide receiver sit of the week, because, again, we brought him up, Xavier Worthy versus Colts. He's only had 1 double-digit game over the past 4 weeks. or 4 games, depending on how you want to look at it. And ever since Rice has come back, he's just really touchdown dependent. It makes me very nervous to play him moving forward. So, with that in mind, I am going to try and wrap this up because I think I want to. Oh, all right, Ryan. You think targets stay for Diggs with the booty coming back, or is it that? No. So, Ryan, this is a great question. The thing about Diggs is that he is so efficient currently that it doesn't matter that booty comes back. If anything, it actually helps because Diggs has a set role. And when he's on the field, he's getting targeted at the highest rate at a also like a route per run rate. So he has the highest among every wide receiver because of how few routes he's running. He's being targeted at such a high rate. I don't think it affects Diggs. Diggs is going to be very consistent. However, it does limit his upside. And I brought it up earlier, but the Patriots have one of the best rest of season schedules for wide receivers. So definitely something that I'm going to keep an eye on, but I'm very much sticking with Diggs moving forward. All right. Going to do this by myself again because I don't have Neil, but it's everybody's favorite time, the weekend of the week. We're going to do some tight end roulette.
Spin the wheel, place a bet. It's time again for tight end roulette.
Presented by Ballpark Franks. They plump when you cook them. Import concept is in no way affiliated with Monsanto or Ballpark Franks.
Alrighty. Well, dang it. I was hoping that'd be bigger. I'll adjust it real quick. Since there's no Neil and it's just me hanging out, let's spin a wheel for tight ends. First one up, it's going to be no Fant. Shouldn't be too surprising. I'm terrified of this. It's more due to the fact that Gesicki's coming back. I liked him a lot more when it was him and Yoshivas, but having that split 3 ways in a game that I expect him to really struggle and they'll need to move the ball, it makes me very nervous. Because Patriots are a good team. They're able to get after the other players. It makes me not want to play him. So, not one of my favorite options. Let's do it again. Alrighty. This is interesting because it's Shadir Sanders, more of an option for you. You're looking at potential with Njoku out and him being a short area target. Fannin gets a boost up. I am willing to flex this, but it's going to be very low end tight end streamer because I like other options. I'd put him at my 3rd option for this wheel. Oh, man, I meant to remove him. Oh, I can just do it this way. I'll do it manually. All right. This would be my 4th option. I actually like Darnell Washington. He continues to be one of the targets that Rodgers is going to. However, if it does go to Rudolph, I would be much more terrified. This would not be something I would consider. However, with Rodgers, he's been running a good amount of snaps. He's something that team really enjoys and continues to be a dominant force on that offense. Because, again, for some reason, it's not DK. I don't understand that, except for the bracket coverage, and so they're having to throw to Darnell, and he's usually open because he's big, and nobody's covering him because they're bracketing DK. So, definitely an option, just lower on the list. I bet you guys could guess who my number 1 option on this wheel is. My number 2 option, though, is A.J. Barner. I really like the Wildcat packages they've been using him in to do the quarterback sneak. He's been coming in and scoring that way. I just don't see them getting away from that because it, one, keeps Darnold safe, and he's been so effective with it. It makes it very difficult for me to want to get away from it at all. Do we get lucky? No, we don't. I'm actually okay with Mark Andrews. Isaiah Likely, again, is dealing with injury. They're going to likely have to throw this game a little bit. And so, Andrews, we just saw they won that last game with a fake punt or a fake field goal, and Andrews just walked right in. That just absolutely incredible. If they continue to do that, he's one of the few targets that they go to consistently in the red zone, especially with just how that offense has been moving. He's very difficult to get away from. And then, of course, my boy, my number one option for tight end, shouldn't be any surprise, is Jawan Johnson. Coming off the bye, continues to run so many over 90% of snap, play at 90% of snaps, seeing the highest target rate for tight ends. It's pretty incredible, and continues to be used week in and week out. Absolutely love it. So this would be my number one option. But with that will wrap up tight end roulette.
Spin the wheel, place a bet. It's time again for tight end roulette.
Presented by Ballpark Franks. They plump when you cook them. Important content is in no way affiliated with Mark Sanchez or Ballpark Franks.
All right, sorry about that. Keep messing things up. All right, Ryan, one last quick question. Okay. Is Pearsall droppable? No. I agree. It's not just that, but this is also the fact that I expected him to be on limited snaps. Also why I had Jennings over him. He is very much a big player bus guy, but in that last game, they really didn't need to use him. They were getting it done just fine with what they had. So it made me very iffy to roll or to trust it. I don't have him much higher this week, but I do have him as a flex because I do expect them to potentially have to throw a little more. Panthers have been playing very well. 49ers are beat up. Assuming that everybody continues to go for the Panthers, this is actually one of the higher over-unders of the week at 48.5. So I'm very interested to see how this ends up breaking down. All right, Daniel. Picked up Aubrey, who is Beth. Doesn't surprise me. Roll him with or Badgley, Gay a little, or I still, again, like Fairbairn the most of these. Borealis is the next one, and then Little. But I'm fine rolling Aubrey. He's one of the consistent players. It's just that team is able to score, which kind of limits his, not necessarily upside, but it does kind of limit his upside in the sense that it's not based on field goals. He's kicking extra points, so he's only getting one, while players like Fairbairn, who the team struggles to score, they're getting 3. So he still is the 5th best kicker, but that it also is due to the fact that Fairbairn was out for 2 weeks. Fairbairn has the highest points per game at 11.9 fantasy points, and I just expect him to roll right back into that. All right, Glitchy, set your lineup. Stafford, Caleb. So of them, let me pull up my rankings back for quarterbacks. I'm pretty sure it's going to be Stafford. Yeah, I have Stafford as my quarterback 5. Then I'm picking 2 running backs: Bijan, Etienne, Aaron Jones, Tracy, Zach Charbonnet. I have Bijan as a top 5 back. I have the next one on that list, I think. Yep, Etienne I have at my running back 12, followed by, I think it's Aaron Jones next. Yep, Aaron Jones at 15. And then 2 wide receivers, Egbuka, Wandale, Jamison Williams, flex. So of those, I have Egbuka still the highest, even though it is the Rams, so I am a little nervous. I have him 3 spots lower than consensus as my wide receiver 9. I then have Wandale, and then I have Williams. So that covers everything. That I think that sets your lineup in such a way that you have both upside and floor built into all those players. So hopefully that works out. Any of those people trouble for Burrow? Caleb, Tracy, Jones, Charbonnet, Kincaid. Of them, I'm most likely to either drop Caleb or Charbonnet. Because again, that backfield in Seattle is extremely frustrating, and it's just too risky. And I'd much rather have the upside of Burrow, assuming he plays again this year. All right. Well, with all that, I've covered everything. I'm sorry you didn't get the Neil and I show, but I'm hoping that I did a well enough job by myself that you guys aren't too upset. I'm also going to let you get out of here early because I have been talking for almost 90 minutes. I could continue to do this by myself, but I just feel like an insane person. I don't understand how streamers do this. I'd much rather be playing a video game. At least I'd have other people to talk to. Ryan, Purdy or Darnold this week? I have Purdy at my quarterback 7 and Darnold at quarterback 11. So Purdy by a little bit. But again, like I said, the fact that I've been able to do this is surprising to even me. In any case, I've gone over everything I need to go over. If you guys have any last second questions, I will give you the next 2 minutes. I'll give you 2 minutes. I could actually wait till 9 for it to be an exactly a 90-minute show. Because again, I started late. I was hoping that Neil would get back to me, and it didn't happen, unfortunately. So, Daniel, thanks. I appreciate it. This again, not how I expected this to go. Without Neil, but I somehow was able to make it through. All right, Matthew, with my running backs super thin, should I try and send Kittle and a piece? Oh, A. Pierce for strong arm. Dude, for those two, I would expect an RB1 back. I'm not going to lie. I would be... Let me see who I have as... I would try and get Henry for something like that. I think you could very easily get that, potentially plus something. So that'd be something that I'm curious to see how that works out. But because again, Kittle currently, I know he's struggling, but now that not Pierce, now that Purdy is back, it's very much an uptick for how he's played, and we saw that immediately. I'm very curious to see how that team looks at full strength. No problem. Happy to help. I'm telling you, it has its moments. It's very interesting. The thing I'm now most excited for is Friday. I will be going to see Wicked 2, this part 2. So that's my new movie that I'll have a review up on, likely Saturday or Sunday, depending on how much time I have. So, Tamara, absolutely. I will let you all know what happened to Neil. I'm really just assuming he got sick or is potentially out of power. I don't know what the weather is like in Denver, but if it's anything like Kansas, I have noticed that there isn't any. Didn't look like any snow from what I saw, which is extremely frustrating because I was planning to go out there and potentially go snowboarding upcoming, probably Christmas or Thanksgiving. So be very curious to see how that works out. All right, Tamara. May or Purdy? I have May as my quarterback numero uno. He is my number 1 ranked quarterback. So it's going to be very difficult for me to get away from him as an option this week. Against the Bengals, I expect him to potentially have to throw. So, and he should be able to do whatever he wants. It's a big boost. I am a little nervous because, again, Part of it is the splits between Henderson and Stevenson if he's back, or if it's just Henderson, they could easily run away with it. But I still expect May to be an effective player, and so I just can't bring myself to move him much lower than that. Honestly, this week the top 10 is really just stacked at the position. The one I'm iffy on, like I said earlier, is Josh Allen. So, but again, if he continues to rush in touchdowns, it makes it very difficult. I'm not willing to pick up Knicks. Franklin is interesting just because of how he's played recently. He is, let me see. Currently, the quarterback or wide receiver. Well, that's standard. I hate that it keeps doing that. I don't know why it keeps resetting like that. He is currently the wide receiver 24, averaging 12 fantasy points per game. If you actually go by points per game, though, he moves from 24 to well, where'd he go? To 35. So he's still a flex, but in any case, it definitely makes it easy for you to have him as a flex on your bench, depending on who you have to drop. Yeah, again, like I said, I'm very nervous about it. I'm hoping for the best for him. See, works out great. Happy to help. I will see you all tomorrow ahead of kickoff, like usual. I'll do my short show, and should be another quick and easy one because, again, it's not a game I'm super excited for. I don't expect it to be extremely high scoring. I don't expect it to be anything special. I'm very nervous about it because, like I said, Texans have been really good on defense. And while the over-under, I think, was set at 45.5, it's not an ideal situation for sure. So, much rather not worry about it. But yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. Then we'll have the betting show Friday. Oh, here, I can just do this. We have the countdown tomorrow, betting show Friday, and then I'll be back Sunday doing all the start sits like usual. Hope you all have a wonderful night, and I will see you either tomorrow or Sunday, more than likely. Really appreciate you all sticking with me for the 90 minutes. So all good. You too. I'll be back again tomorrow, like I said, tomorrow and Sunday. So in that case, remember, as always, to keep up the nonsense. We will see you guys